on the air tonight with a ferocious and deadly storm lashing Southern California. Cars swamped in mud from landslides. Look at this. Roads washed out. Nearly 500,000 people still do not have power, with officials saying this relentless downpour is about to get even more intense. We'll have a live report coming up in the show. Plus, the stunning revelation from Buckingham Palace announcing King Charles has cancer and is going to step away from the public eye. Who's rushing to be by his side, and some of the important details the palace is leaving out. Plus, a mixed bag for Boeing tonight, why some of their newest planes are really close to getting cleared to fly, while another glitch means some 737s aren't leaving the factory anytime soon. Then, why is Donald Trump already claiming victory in a state he's not even technically on the primary ballot for? Everything you ever wanted to know about Nevada caucus confusion in tonight's breakdown. And a closer look at the Grammy speech that has everyone talking about the award Beyonce has never won. That's later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight we start with that dangerous and deadly situation out west. I want to show this to you here. Massive mudslides in the Hollywood Hills in L.A. Look at this, with storms in California just getting pummeled throughout the state. This is just one of dozens of mudslides. You're seeing homes damaged, people evacuating, so much water. I mean, you can see how treacherous it is. Already, falling trees have killed 3 people, with millions more still in danger in California. And the risk is not even close to being over. Further north in San Jose, you're going to see it here. Rescuers in rafts to pull out 3 people, 3 dogs, and 9 puppies. There they are after they were trapped in the flooding. More than 30 million people are under flood watch, hundreds of thousands without power. Police reporting dozens of road rescue calls with cars trying to maneuver through the rain. Santa Barbara Airport closed until further notice. Meteorologists say this area hasn't seen a storm this bad since 2010. Schools are shutting down. Counties across the state issuing evacuation warnings and states of emergency for some of the spots most at risk of flash floods. Even Disneyland's closing its doors early today. Our team is all over this one. Elwin Lopez is on the ground in Ventura, California. Meteorologist Bill Cairns is standing by, too. Elwin, let me go to you first. Something like a month of rain getting dumped on L.A. in just a day. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Hallie. And you can see here why we're in one of those counties under a state of emergency. All of this debris came in because we saw 7 to 11 feet waves rush in, bringing all of this debris onto the beach or onto the shoreline. And, you know, it's not over yet. We saw a little break in the action, but now we're back at it. We're seeing rain picking up these bands of moisture that are coming in. And you know what? This is going to continue on throughout the night and into tomorrow. But one of the things I want you to take a listen to is one of those areas hardest hit. You mentioned it earlier in the Hollywood Hills, someone who experienced something they had never seen before.
We were just pretty, scared. And came out, we looked, and it was just the whole street was. See these bricks over here, those big boulders? They were like all the way up. They were all the way across the street. They've been cleared up since then. So the street was just a mess.
And that mess is going to continue, and they're expecting flash flood threats continuing throughout the night. And you know what, Hallie, we're not going to see sunshine here until Thursday. This is something that Californians are not used to. We know that reported right now 2 deaths, at least 2 deaths. That's in the northern part of the state. And officials here are warning, listen, the worst of this is not over yet, so stay alert and stay vigilant and stay off the roads if you can. Hallie?
Yeah, no kidding. Nobody should be trying to drive through some of this stuff. Elwin Lopez, a dramatic scene there where you are in Ventura. Thank you. Bill Cairns, let me bring you in now. With the National Weather Service calling this a potentially historic bomb cyclone. What does that mean?
It's just a fast-growing storm. This one had the intensity with winds 100 to 150 miles per hour in the mountains. And, of course, we've seen the damage from all the rainfall. And the problem now is that it's stalled off the California coast, and the atmospheric river portion of it is stuck right over Los Angeles. I mean, this is, as bad as a storm that many people will ever live through in downtown L.A. So they've already picked up over 6.5 inches since yesterday at midnight. So we're looking at the possibility of heading now towards top 1, 2, or 3 of the 2 rainiest days in L.A. history, which started keeping weather records 147 years ago. So we have to get to about 7.5 inches, and we may get there. This may end up being the wettest 2 days ever in L.A. history, recorded history. And you can see here's downtown L.A. This is more heavy rain streaming in. This box to the north up here is a new flash flood warning. So anyone driving the 405, anyone heading up towards the Hollywood Hills, Van Nuys, north of Malibu, this is the problem region. 5 to 10 inches has already fallen, and now now we're getting downpours again. It was a little break earlier today, but now it's really picked up. Rainfall totals, in addition to what we've already had, could be another 1 to 3 inches. So this is really historic stuff in the L.A. area. Hallie, we're hoping that it's spread apart far enough that we can minimize the flooding concerns. You know, doing this in one day is a lot better than doing it in, doing it in 2 days, excuse me, is a lot better than doing it in one.
Yeah, that's right. Give that water a chance to recede a bit. As we talk about the potential for historic weather in California, there's also the potential, on a separate issue here, that we might actually be seeing Category 6 hurricanes, because the hurricanes have been getting so intense coast to coast that the Weather Service is considering, like, naming them in a different way. Tell me about that.
Okay, so we have what we call the Saffir-Simpson scale. We've all heard, Category 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is the highest. What this study did is, there's flaws in this. There's only the Saffir-Simpson scale. We only describe hurricane categories based on the wind. It has nothing to do with how much rain they produce, nothing to do with the storm surge. It's only wind. And what they're saying in this study is that, well, we're getting ones that are well above, Category 5. We should have a different level. There's an unlimited bound, and with climate change and the storms getting stronger, that their point was that we should do that. Now, this is not something being yet considered by the National Hurricane Center, Hallie. This is just a separate study that they said that. And, some scientists agree, and some are already saying, like myself, Category 5, pretty much everything's going to be destroyed. So do we really need to say Category 6? That's up for debate. It's not a perfect system, and I think that's the biggest point of the study.
Bill Cairns, thank you so much. I know you're watching everything going on, of course, coast to coast throughout the night. We'll check back in with you in just a little bit. We got to get to some new reaction tonight to that news out of Buckingham Palace. That King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. We don't know what kind or what stage it's in, or when he's going to be back to his public duties, after doctors said he should hold off on those for now. President Biden late today says he will give King Charles a call, but we already know the king has spoken with both of his sons about this diagnosis, according to the palace. With Prince Harry, you see him on the left there, after years of tension, set to travel to the UK to see his dad at some point soon, according to a source close to both Harry and his wife, Meghan Markle. I want to bring in Megan Fitzgerald, who's outside Buckingham Palace. A surprise announcement here. We knew there had been some health concerns for King Charles previously. He was in the hospital. Now we're learning a little bit more about what those are with this cancer diagnosis, but still so many questions about what this actually is. It is apparently not prostate cancer. He was treated for an enlarged prostate just last week, but that's about all we know.
Yeah, Hallie, you're absolutely right. I mean, the details are really thin. I mean, what the palace is saying is that while King Charles was undergoing treatment for a benign enlarged prostate about a week and a half ago, another issue was detected. After multiple tests, it was in fact determined that the king has a form of cancer. As you mentioned, what type of cancer, the palace has not said. But look, we saw the king yesterday for the first time since leaving the hospital a week ago. He was attending church service at Sandringham. He seemed to be in good form. He was walking and waving and smiling at crowds that had gathered. We do understand that he came back to London this morning where he started his cancer treatments. There's a schedule of treatments that are in place, and doctors are encouraging him to postpone all of his public appearances until after the treatment is done. When will that be? Again, the palace has not said, but it's certainly something that we will be watching closely.
And what's interesting here, too, as we talk about all the tension between King Charles and Prince Harry over the past couple of years, is Harry apparently set to see his father soon after this cancer diagnosis. Do you know anything else on that end?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, this has certainly been a deteriorating situation, right, since the docuseries, the Netflix docuseries was released, and then that was followed up by the book Spare, which spared no personal details about the royal family. It would have been since May, since the king's coronation, that we saw Prince Harry seeing his father, seeing him in public here. And even then, it was certainly an awkward, chilly reception. He came in and then he left. So, tragedies, unfortunate events sometimes have the potential to bring families together. So that's certainly something that we will be watching for as we suspect we will see Prince Harry here visiting his father in the coming days. Hallie.
What about Princess Kate? Because she is also postponing her royal duties for a couple of months. She went in the hospital right around the same time we found out that King Charles did. Separate issue, obviously. She had some kind of abdominal surgery. Still a pretty rare moment here to have, two of the highest profile people in the planet stepping back from some of those public duties for a bit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and also when you take a look at the active royal family, you don't have Prince Andrew, you don't have Prince Harry, so it's not a deep bench here, right? So we know that a lot of the responsibilities will likely fall on Prince William, along with Queen Camilla. Prince William taking care of Princess Kate, as you mentioned. She's recovering now from an abdominal surgery that was successful, but she's not expected to return to her public duties until after Easter. So that certainly gives the gravity of just how significant of a surgery that was. So he's now meant to take care of his family, take care of his wife, and also pick up these duties. So yeah, certainly an unprecedented situation that we're looking at here, as we are now looking at two active members of the royal family that are dealing with health concerns.
Megan Fitzgerald live for us there outside Buckingham Palace. A dramatic day, of course, there in the UK. Megan, thanks. Let's take you to Chile now, in a horrific scene there with hundreds of people missing, 122 people at least dead, and the first of 2 days of national mourning with deadly wildfires ripping through the country. Whole neighborhoods, now just piles of ash. Look at that. The Chilean president says people have to prepare for more bad news. You've got 100 active fires still burning, even as we speak, across something like 100,000 acres of land. Tonight, there's a 9 o'clock curfew in place in some of the hardest hit spots. Guad Venegas is joining us now. How did these fires get so bad, and what are they doing to try to get it under control?
Hallie, that curfew put in place by the president, he declared a state of emergency also to make more resources available. So the temperatures are one of the contributing factors. When you look at what caused this, of course, you look at what happens in places like California, and it's very similar circumstances. So most of the fires, at least the worst fires, are in central Chile, in this region of Valparaíso. There's a famous resort city, Viña del Mar, which has a very famous music festival and beach locations. The communities in this area are the most affected. Now, as of this weekend, authorities say they had about 165 fires burning throughout the country. Some of those have been contained. Others have already what's called in control but not contained. And then some of those, the firefighters are still fighting. Now, we've seen these images, most of them coming from the Viña del Mar area. When you hear the stories of the residents that survived that, it is just incredible how they were able to get out. Let's hear from one of the survivors.
My sister forgot something, her wallet. She had to get it out and so returned, and my father stayed there. She went back, but the smoke there consumed him. Later, he was intoxicated and could not breathe. I think there were many bodies that died intact.
And this was the same case with other survivors who are returning to these homes, as you can see in the images that have been left in ashes, who are now recovering whatever they can save, and also talking about the relatives that they've lost in these fires, Hallie.
And no idea how these fires started yet, Guad?
So here's what we know about the fires. Authorities say that they believe that the worst fires in these urban areas could have been caused by some individuals. So there's already an investigation in place. They've also arrested some individuals, but they are asking for more witnesses to come forward with information about those fires. Now, when you look at the whole of Chile, I mentioned 165 fires burning over the weekend. There's a few different factors. One is the high temperatures. Chile was coming from a week of high temperatures. This is a heat wave affecting the entire southern part of America, South America, also because of the vegetation in those areas and, of course, the climate change. We do have the El Nino climate pattern currently affecting that area, Hallie.
Guad Venegas covering all of it there for us in Chile. Guad, thank you so much. Back here at home, some good news and some bad news tonight for Boeing, with one set of their planes almost totally cleared to fly, but another set having to sit in Boeing's factories for the foreseeable future. All right, so first things first, let's start with the FAA saying today they're almost done inspecting nearly 150 of Boeing's 737 MAX 9s, an announcement that comes a month to the day after that door plug in a MAX 9 blew off that Alaska Airlines flight midair. I know you remember that. You're seeing some of that video. The FAA says they've looked at nearly 94% of the aircraft they need to, 133 of those planes, before they fly again. So, okay, almost done on that end. However, there's also another headline for Boeing tonight, revealing another potential issue with these 737s, misdrilled holes. So improperly drilled holes on the fuselages of about 50 of their yet-to-be-delivered planes. Misdrilled holes sounds kind of scary.
Sounds scary, but
Tell me.
I'm always going to give you the straight scoop here. Unfortunately, misdrilled holes happen from time to time, and not that unusual, I will tell you, with this provider, with Spirit Aerosystems. They've had a lot of production problems over the years. They've been cited and they've been sued over these production problems. That said, this is significant in that it's another black eye for Boeing, and it really suggests that its entire supply chain continues to be a problem. So we've been talking about what Boeing is doing to try to fix that. The FAA today also outlined a number of steps. It's going to double down on inspections, double down on surveillance, double down on audits inside not just Boeing, but also this company I mentioned, Spirit Aerosystems, trying to figure out what is the problem. So that's the FAA talking about the various steps it's going to take to try to figure out how it can try to get a better handle on Boeing's problems. Make no mistake about it, this is having a serious impact. And tomorrow, the FAA chief will be on Capitol Hill. He is likely to come out with a pretty tough line against Boeing, announcing these steps I told you about. But in addition, he's going to be on the hot seat. Where have the FAA inspectors been in these Boeing production plants for the last few years since the MAX 8 crashes killed 346 people?
But so talk about that, the longer-term impact here to Boeing, because there were those 2 fatal crashes. There was that door plug blowout just last month. There's this sort of drip, drip, drip of news coming out about Boeing and some of its subcontractors here. What's your sense from talking to folks in and around the company about where things go for them?
By the way, and there's the timeline, right? We've talked about the various crashes, Lion Air, Ethiopian Air, then we had the door plug in January. Listen, I think they've used up a lot of goodwill in the FAA. They don't have the benefit of the doubt anymore, and I think we're going to see even on Capitol Hill, they don't have the benefit of the doubt. Take a look at what the public opinion polls show on Boeing right now, because before this incident with the door plug back in December, public opinion showed about 32% trusted Boeing. That's now dropped. Look at that. And Boeing's stock price has taken a hit because of all of this drama over the course of the last 6 weeks.
The bottom line, those numbers are not what Boeing wants to see, Tom, right? Where they're talking about trust, where they're talking about stock. They don't want to see a down arrow. They want to see an up arrow.
Absolutely true. That said, this is a national security company. It's responsible for a huge section of the United States GDP. Boeing's not going out of business. There's really only one other competitor out there. That's Airbus. They're not going out of business, and it's in the United States' interest that they do well.
That's so interesting. Tom Costello, we're so glad to have you. Thank you. Lots of news on that front today. Appreciate it. There's a committee in the House voting on whether to send articles of impeachment against the Homeland Security Secretary over to the full House of Representatives. And here's your spoiler. This thing is expected to pass. We can't call it till it does, but that is the expectation, that this whole impeachment issue moves to the floor later on this week. That's happening, even as there's also this different border battle brewing on immigration here, and it is really coming to a head, with some Senate Republicans tonight rejecting some of the immigration reforms that Republicans have been calling for years. These 4 Senate Republicans already coming out against this brand new bill, joining a ton of colleagues on the other side of the Hill in the House, including Speaker Mike Johnson, who declared it essentially DOA, even though there's a lot in this bill that Republicans have said is on their wish list. Total border shutdowns, more money for new hires and deportation flights, a stricter asylum process. However, a lot of trouble right now getting some real Republican momentum behind this thing, perhaps a non-coincidental split screen. Former President Trump keeps bashing this plan today, calling it I'm quoting here, a highly sophisticated trap. You see it there. NBC's Sahil Kapoor is one of the members of our team following this on Capitol Hill for us. We've just learned in the last couple of minutes from our producing team on the Hill there that Senate Republicans are set to sit down in the next hour, right, to talk about this whole thing. Is that a good sign for the fate of this immigration bill? Is that a bad sign for the fate of this border bill?
We will find out, Hallie. I think we'll see coming out of that meeting whether senators end up saying, well, I'm not going to support this, it's a bad bill, or whether the tide turns right now. At this moment, it's certainly looking like an uphill climb for this bill to ultimately get the votes to pass the Senate, where it will need 60. It's really quite dizzying to cover all of this, Hallie, because this is the most conservative border security and asylum restriction bill in decades. This is, as recently as 6 months ago, this would have been a dream come true for conservatives, that President Biden would sign on to all these measures without any of the Democratic priorities that they had wanted, like legalization for dreamers, DACA provisions, that sort of thing. Let's take a look at what some Senate Republicans are saying about this. The whip count does not look great on the Republican side. Senator Steve Daines, the NRSC chairman, says he can't support a bill that doesn't secure the border. He's a no. Mike Lee says the deal is even worse than we thought. No one who cares about our own border security should support it. Josh Hallie is a no. Ted Cruz is a no. We can count to 19 Senate Republicans who have already come out against this bill. That's getting close to half the Senate Republican conference. Senator Chris Murphy, the lead Democratic negotiator, and Senator Lankford made their case for the bill. They spoke to our colleague Ryan Nobles. Let's play what they said.
We did exactly what Republicans asked of us, and now those same Republicans are saying we've changed our mind.
This is the starting proposal, and if people want to be able to make changes on it, let's make changes on it. But the worst case scenario is to do nothing.
And the Senate is expected to start voting on this Wednesday, Hallie. That's when it will need 60 votes to move forward, or it could stop right then and there.
Sahil Kapoor live for us there on Capitol Hill. Sahil, thank you so much. Lots to talk about, lots to cover. We'll check back in with you and the team tonight. Right as we were coming on the air here, actually right before we walked into set, jurors in Michigan wrapped up day one of deliberations in the unprecedented trial of the mother of a convicted school shooter. Tomorrow morning, they're going to be back to pick up where they left off. We're talking about Jennifer Crumbley, of course, today in court as the judge read the jury instructions before those men and women went off to decide whether or not Crumbley deserves prison time for what her son did. The judge telling jurors that it isn't enough that Crumbley's actions made the deaths of 4 students possible, but that they have to find that those students died because of the direct result of what she did, not her son, but her. She's facing multiple involuntary manslaughter charges, one for each of the 4 students her son killed. Hannah St. Juliana, Tate Meir, Madison Baldwin, Justin Schilling. What's at stake here? Up to 15 years in prison and thousands of dollars in fines if she's found guilty. Her husband, James Crumbley, will be tried separately next month, same charges. Maggie Vespa is joining us now. So listen, a significant step forward in this jury today, in this case today, because the jurors now have it. It is now in their hands. They are done for the day. They'll be back tomorrow morning. And the judge made clear, as we know, a verdict has got to be unanimous. Talk us through what you see as sort of the biggest considerations on their plate at the moment.
Yeah, exactly, Hallie. So in Michigan, this has to be a unanimous verdict on any of the 4 counts or all of the 4 counts. They could go one by one. They could parcel these out. But the legal language is same count to count, right? So it seems logical from a layman's standpoint that if it's guilty on one or not guilty on one, it might apply to all, one would think, but remains to be seen. The thing that's kind of been the biggest point that we've been chewing on, the jury actually asked a question about just a couple hours into the 7 hours of deliberations today, is what exactly the prosecution has to prove. Because in the jury instructions this morning, the judge said, hey, the prosecution can go through one of 2 avenues. This is what we're talking about here. The first avenue is that Crumbley was grossly negligent in how she stored the weapon, the gun that she and her husband had given their son, and how they stored the ammo, and that allowed Ethan to get access to the gun leading up to the shooting and then kill 4 classmates. That's avenue number 1. Or the jury could decide the prosecutors cleared the bar for avenue number 2, that she failed to perform what they call her legal duty as a parent and exercise reasonable care. This is according to Michigan state statutes, and basically protect other people from being hurt by her child based on what she knew. And that implies kind of his mental health concerns, those red flags that we heard about during the trial, things like he had heard hallucinations and texted his mom, or seen hallucinations in the house, texted his mom about that. He had written on that homework assignment a drawing of a gun and written, "The thoughts won't stop, help me," and things like blood everywhere. So they say with all of these red flags, she should have had reasonable concern and protected other people from her child. So the jury can find either one of those avenues and say the prosecution cleared the bar on just one of 2. And here's the crazy thing. Prosecutors also, the judge said, didn't have to, or I should say jurors don't have to agree on which avenue prosecutors kind of successfully went down. They can have disagreements as to which bar the prosecution cleared, but as long as all 12 think that either one of those has been cleared, that's how we get to a guilty verdict in this case. So jurors had a lot of questions about that. If people at home are confused, the jury was too for a little bit of time. They also had questions about why Ethan Crumbley himself didn't testify in his mom's trial, why he didn't, for instance, get on the stand and talk specifically how he got access to the gun that day, how he got the key to get it out of the gun box. But that is because the judges said he made it clear that he would plead the 5th if he took the stand. Therefore, he was not called. So again, we are at the end of day one of jury deliberations. They will come back tomorrow, the judge has said. And then you talked about James Crumbley's trial. That's set for next month, where we could see a lot of this argued all over again. Hallie.
Maggie Vespa, thank you so much. Coming up here on the show, Canadian police finally announcing charges in a hockey scandal that has rocked that country for years. What we're just learning and what the NHL's doing about it. Plus, why Jacob Elordi is under investigation in Australia. Got to talk about this new update tonight in a scandal that is upending the hockey world and forcing the NHL and really all of Canada to face questions about the sports culture. That's because police in Ontario are finally announcing charges, you see it here, against 5 players related to an alleged 2018 sexual assault and apologizing to the victim.
On behalf of the London Police Service, my sincerest apology to the victim, to her family, for the amount of time that it has taken to reach this point.
You see the 5 players there. The big name, Flyers goalie Carter Hart. Each is charged with 1 count of sexual assault, with Mike McLeod facing a 2nd charge. The 4 who are still in the NHL are on leave. All 5 say they're not guilty in a scandal we have been following for more than a year on this show. The scandal that's led to big money settlements, parliamentary hearings in Canada, and a ton of criticism of the police. Shaq Brewster's all over this one for us today. And Shaq, light on specifics in today's presser, but heavy on the idea that both hockey and this particular police department are facing a lot of questions about why this moment took so long. As now in the last hour, we're hearing from the victim's lawyer. Tell us more.
Yeah, Hallie, you know, despite it being a pretty extensive press conference that we saw earlier today, there are still a lot of questions that many people have about how this case was handled. The police chief you mentioned, he did apologize, but he couldn't apologize and couldn't detail why it took nearly 6 years to get to this point of charges now being filed. And really the questions go toward the timeline that you have here that the police confirmed in the press conference earlier today. You have in June of 2018, the alleged assault immediately it happens and was immediately reported, the police confirming that timeline. Then after about 8 months, the case was closed, police saying at the time there wasn't enough evidence essentially to move to the next part of this process. And then everything changed in 2022 after the victim, and she wants to be called the victim here rather than an accuser according to police, after the victim filed that civil lawsuit against a number of players and organizations. Now, while that lawsuit, Hallie, was settled, it sparked a lot of outrage, and it also sparked a review of that original investigation. That review was kicked off in July of 2022, and then last month you had all 5 of the players surrendering. So we are also hearing from the victim in this case through her attorney. I wanted to put up a statement from what we're hearing from that side right now. They say it takes an incredible amount of courage for any survivor of sexual assault to report to the police and participate in the criminal justice system. That is certainly true for EM, yet she remains committed to seeing this process through. And Hallie, in the hours before that press conference that we watched earlier today, we saw those who are accused of this sexual assault appear in court. It was a short hearing, just about 15 minutes, but we can expect to see them in court again in late April.
I think one of the big questions here, Shaq, is the way that the NHL is handling this, or is expected to handle this too, because we've talked a lot on this show about the big picture issues that hockey faces broadly when it comes to addressing sexual assault. This is landing. I mean, this is huge news in Canada, where the hockey culture is kind of like football culture here, right? So talk through the NHL. Talk through what we saw at the All-Star game this weekend, because there just hasn't been a huge commitment to trying to get ahead of this. It sounds like the NHL wants to see how this all plays out.
Right, Hallie. And, you know, the language that we heard from the commissioner was very strong. He used words like abhorrent. He said it was reprehensible, horrific, unacceptable. But then he said this right after. Listen here.
And so at this stage, the most responsible and prudent thing for us to do is await the conclusion of the judicial proceedings, at which point we will respond as appropriate at the time.
the NHL did conduct its own investigation, so we're not going to learn the results of the investigation or see any consequences from that investigation until these legal proceedings take place, and they're not expected to move that quickly. I mentioned we're not going to see those accused players or those accused of sexual assault in a courtroom again until April. So it's going to be a slow process, and you have the NHL essentially saying we're going to let that process play out before we really evaluate what we should do on our end.
Shaq Brewster, glad to have you covering this one for us. Thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the mayor of Dearborn in Michigan is ramping up security after a Wall Street Journal op-ed called the city, I'm quoting here, America's jihad capital. He says that particular op-ed, you see it there by Steven Stalinsky, has created a rise in Islamophobic rhetoric targeting the city, which already has a really big Arab American population. Listen to what he said on MSNBC.
That piece was extremely inflammatory, and upon it being published, we received many calls from faith leaders across the community who no longer felt safe.
President Biden referencing Dearborn online, saying we need to condemn hate. The Wall Street Journal did not reply to requests for comment. Number 2, you know Jacob Elordi. He is under investigation for allegedly assaulting a radio producer in Australia. The producer says he went up to Elordi, who's obviously a super famous actor. They were at a pub, went up to him, and jokingly asked for his bathwater, a reference, if you've seen Saltburn, to a scene in that movie. He says Elordi told him to stop recording and then got in his face, demanded he delete the footage, touched his throat even. Elordi's team did not immediately reply to NBC's request for comment. Number 2, the father of Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes has been arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated. He was released on bond yesterday. He also faced a DWI charge back in 2018. This, of course, is just 6 days before his son is set to play in the Super Bowl this weekend. Reps for Mahomes' father have not responded to requests for comment. Number 4, a new study found the weight loss drug tirzepatide can drastically lower blood pressure. Mounjaro, you see the box? That's like its, market name, if you will. Zepbound, that's another one. Researchers say that this particular drug really lowered the blood pressure of obese adults who took it for about 9 months. But they say we need some more research to figure out stuff like the long-term impacts on the heart. Number 5, the next World Cup final. Get ready, MetLife Stadium in Jersey beat out Texas and California. Remember, the 2026 World Cup spread across the continent, mostly here in the U.S., but also in Mexico and Canada. For the final, however, get ready for bucolic East Rutherford. That'll be a nice one for you there when we come back. New information, new details just into us now. Nikki Haley says she's asking for Secret Service protection. We'll explain why and the impact of potential threats. Plus, how the Coast Guard ended up saving a puppy stuck in a shipping container for days. And the first Ivy League school reinstating SATs to get in after making them optional just a few years ago. We'll explain the 180. We got to get to some breaking news coming into us from the campaign trail as our team is learning that Nikki Haley, of course, the Republican presidential candidate, has asked for Secret Service detail as she goes about South Carolina and other parts of the country campaigning. I want to get to Alli Vitale, who is covering the Haley campaign and has confirmed this news for us, Alli, from Spartanburg, South Carolina. What is behind this? It seems like it's being motivated by threats that Haley says she's facing.
Yeah, look, and Haley said this as recently as Friday, Hallie, saying that an increase in threats on the campaign trail is sort of part of life on the trail these days as a politician. So certainly not what you want to hear. But you and I have done these presidential campaigns before. There always comes a point with these candidates where they want to see a ramp up in security and where there's usually a request for Secret Service protection. Now, I'm out to the Secret Service to confirm this with them and to ask for any more details that they might have. But this is confirmed to me by the Nikki Haley campaign, a spokesperson there confirming comments that Haley made earlier today to the Wall Street Journal, where she cited that increase in threats as a reason why they've reached out to Secret Service for Secret Service protection. Now, we're standing here outside of one of her events in Spartanburg. You and I both know it's pretty easy to identify Secret Service protection once it is in place. I am not yet seeing signs of that here, but of course, that's something that we'll now keep an eye on as we head into really one of the next phases of this race, where there's only 2 candidates left on the Republican side. Of course, a binary between the former president, Donald Trump, who already has Secret Service protection from his time in the White House, to now Nikki Haley being the former UN ambassador, former governor of this state, and now asking for that Secret Service protection herself, Hallie.
And wasn't her house swatted at some point in the last couple of months, Alli?
Yes, multiple times, and that's something that we learned, of course, well after it had happened. That was earlier this year, right at the turn of the year, around January 1st or 2nd. But certainly we've seen the reporting around some of this. When she talks about an increase in threats, that's one of the things that we've heard. But certainly at campaign events, I can tell you, she usually has her own law enforcement protection. So many of these candidates already have that. But of course, this is an escalation in security.
Alli Vitale live for us there on the campaign trail in Spartanburg with that developing news for us tonight from the Haley campaign. Alli, thank you so much. Speaking of the Republican campaign trail, this week Republicans in Nevada are going to be making their pick in a presidential race that has dozens of delegates on the line. And for the first time this year, people have the chance to vote on 2 separate days in 2 different processes, only one of which actually counts. Yes, it is messy. It is mystifying. GOP officials saying they've been inundated with thousands of phone calls from confused Nevadans. So how does it actually all work? And why is former President Trump favored to win? We explain in tonight's breakdown. Even before the election in Nevada, a declaration of victory from former President Trump.
I'm pleased to announce we just won Nevada.
He hasn't technically won Nevada, not yet, but he almost certainly will, even though he's not even on the primary ballot. Sound confusing? Join the club.
It doesn't make much sense to me.
I think our voting system, frankly, is a mess.
Here's the deal. In Nevada this year, registered Republicans will have 2 election days, and they can participate in both. On Thursday, a caucus, like what we saw in Iowa, people gathering in gyms and cafeterias. But up first, tomorrow, a more traditional primary, people lining up to cast ballots. Ballots that do not include Donald Trump's name, as you see here, because candidates cannot compete in both contests. And this year, only the caucuses count for Nevada Republicans when it comes to delegates.
Do the caucus, not the primary. The primary is meaningless.
So how did we get here? In 2020, the Democratic side dealt with complaints of inconsistencies and reporting problems in caucuses, especially in Iowa. So the Dems, who controlled Nevada at the time, passed a law to move to a primary system instead. Nevada Republicans wanted to stick with the caucuses. And under the new law, the state party can, so they are. Partly because, experts say, caucuses favor former President Trump, who has a more loyal base of supporters, more likely to show up.
He would certainly benefit more from the caucus system. And so for a lot of people in the state, it's also viewed as a way to boost his candidacy relative to the other Republicans.
Do you think this was done to be able to help Donald Trump in Nevada?
Oh, I absolutely believe that's exactly why it was done.
Former Clark County Republican Chair Chuck Muth worries this new process will turn off voters because of how messy it seems.
I've been warning how stupid this was and what a public relations disaster it was going to be. And I hate to say that I told you so, but I don't hate saying I told you so because I did tell them that this was going to happen. And anybody could have looked at that and seen it.
Now, confusion and conspiracies. Online, one post accusing the establishment of shoving Nikki Haley down our throat. Another, outraged and disgusted Mr. Trump isn't on the primary ballot.
Washoe County Republican Party.
Some GOP county chairs reporting thousands of phone calls from mad and mystified Republicans.
The phone is ringing off the hook. I got to have a short, concise answer that not only answers their question, but gives them the direction on how to succeed.
Nevada GOP Chairman Michael McDonald telling the Associated Press this fall, until we get voter ID and we get the mail-in ballot situation under control, the only pure way to have this is through a caucus. The state's governor, Joe Lombardo, has endorsed Mr. Trump, saying for all practical purposes, the race is over. As for Nikki Haley, she is not competing in the caucuses, but her name is on the primary ballot.
Talk to the people in Nevada. They will tell you the caucuses have been sealed up, bought and paid for a long time. And so that's why we got into the primary. But we're going to focus on the states that are fair.
Still, keep in mind, even if Haley were to win the primary tomorrow, it would be a hollow victory since she would not get any delegates, with 26 of them on the line. That's no small haul, considering Mr. Trump won 32 in New Hampshire and Iowa combined. Only Nevada's caucus winner can claim Nevada's delegates and move one step closer to the nomination.
Nevada will show up and we will deliver you 100% of delegates for the state of Nevada to Donald J. Trump.
Okay, so we're watching this week. There's one more twist to tell you about. You know that primary tomorrow? Remember, the primary, not the caucus. The winner could end up being none of the above, which is a ballot option that some Trump backers are pushing to deny Haley even a symbolic victory. We're going to have complete coverage right here for you on NBC News Now of all of it. NBC News also covers hundreds of other stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest Bureau, police are looking into the murders of two women whose bodies were found close to each other in Indiana. Officers say they were killed in similar ways, that they both lived in or had ties to the area. We don't know yet how they were killed or any formal indication of whether the murders were connected. Out of the Northeast Bureau, Mike Sorrentino, a.k.a. The Situation from the Jersey Shore, shared this ring cam video of a pretty scary moment at home in New Jersey. His 2-year-old son, Romeo, choking on pasta. You can see him go over to his son, pat him on the back. Eventually, they got the pasta out. He says they are now taking CPR lessons. He's not going to be serving that kind of pasta anytime soon. Wants to share this to help raise awareness, too. Out of our Southern Bureau, a group of Coast Guard inspectors, look at this, saving a puppy who was trapped in a shipping container for more than a week in Texas. There's the pup. They'd been doing some random inspections when they heard some barking. They tracked down the dog, found her. She was tired and hungry, but very happy to see her rescuers, they say. Officials think she was in a car in a junkyard when she got trapped. She has since been named Connie the Container Dog. Connie, now recovering at an animal shelter. So let's take it to Dartmouth College today, announcing it's bringing back the SATs and the ACTs for new applicants. That means Dartmouth is now becoming the very first Ivy League school to change their mind after they made those tests optional a few years back during the pandemic. The school says it's basing the decision rather, on some new research it has. You might remember during COVID, right? A lot of colleges, including all the Ivies, they decided to drop requirements for standardized testing. Testing centers shut down. Obviously, kids couldn't go and take the SAT or the ACTs. But there was something else at play, too. This sort of long simmering concern and backlash against standardized testing, even before the pandemic, with some arguing that it affected lower-income students negatively or students in underrepresented communities. I want to bring in Maura Barrett to talk more about this. It's a big deal and kind of a big flip here, Maura, because for years there had been this discussion around whether standardized tests like the ACTs and the SATs were really the best way to try to create these communities of kids getting accepted into college. But now here's Dartmouth coming and saying, wait a second, we're bringing it back. Why?
I think questions are still going to circle about what's the best way to assess how students get accepted into schools. But Dartmouth is really leaning on this research that 4 of their professors did. They dug into admissions data and they compared years from where testing was required to when testing was optional. And they actually found that testing, that standardized testing combined with high school grades, where it was a better predictor of success for the student in their school. And that's different than just the high school grades on their own or high school standing on its own. And they also found that they were able to ID, it was helpful in IDing applicants who were the first in their family to go to college or lower middle income families and those from rural or urban areas. Now, I love how graphs can break this down so seamlessly. So I want you to take a look at this graph that's on your screen. Basically, the research shows that you can see a linear relationship between the students' SAT scores and their cumulative first-year GPA at Dartmouth. And so basically, the higher their SAT score in high school, the higher their GPA once they actually got to college. And researchers didn't find what they're calling a strong predictive value for comparisons like this against just the GPA or that high school class rank on its own. And if you look at this next chart, it'll show actually how it benefits that diversity that we talked about. Basically, this SAT scores show, you can see that blue line is when applicants admitted their test scores, and that red line on the left is when they excluded it. And so you can see how it does benefit those less advantaged applicants, the research found, and this was actually the same for first-generation applicants as well. And so we know that there's a lot of stress, a lot of emotion around who gets into what college, how you prepare for the testing, how you prepare your applications. But even though there's a lot of that stress that's constantly circulating around these questions of, what makes it fair, this is something that Dartmouth is really leaning on in terms of having a promising, what they call a diverse class, especially up against that recent Supreme Court decision restricting affirmative action, Hallie.
Real quick, Maura, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate you joining us here to talk through all of that. So interesting, and I think the quick question, right, is will other Ivy Leagues follow suit? We will have to see. Maura, thank you. Coming up here on the show, new details in a D.C. crime spree that led to the death of a former Trump administration official. why violent crime is going up where I'm sitting, but going down in nearly every other big city in the country. We are learning more tonight about a former Trump administration official who died this weekend after being shot during an apparently random carjacking spree. We're talking about Mike Gill, shot while he was sitting in his car waiting to pick up his wife right in the heart of downtown Washington when this attacker got into Gill's car, shot him in the head. Violent attacks in D.C. are piling up and spilling into neighborhoods that typically haven't dealt with this kind of violence, making some folks who have lived here for a while feel pretty unsafe. There have been more and more calls for something to be done, some kind of a solution here, including from former President Trump, who has promised to essentially occupy the Capitol with federal troops if he wins the election. Ken Delanian is joining us now. For former President, we'll get to the politics in a second, Ken, as you are there for us now in Washington. But let's get to the sort of facts of the matter here, because violent crime is going down in a lot of cities across the country, but not here in Washington. Why are we an outlier?
It depends on who you ask, Hallie, but there are a few facts that are beyond dispute. One is that the police department has a staffing crisis. They are at the lowest number of police officers in decades, despite offering $25,000 signing bonuses. People do not want to be a police officer in D.C. It's also true that police in D.C. solve violent crimes at a lower rate than in some other cities. And then you have what critics, including some police officers, would say, which is that there is a perception, if not a reality, that criminals are not held accountable in by D.C. judges. They're set free after being arrested for violent crimes, and they're not receiving stiff sentences when convicted of violent crimes. There may be other factors at work, but the bottom line is that, while, as you said, crime is down 10% or more, violent crime in most major cities across the country, it's up 39% over the last year in D.C. and a stunning 55% when it comes to violent gun crime. Hallie.
It is also becoming, as you well know, Ken, a flashpoint, right? Crime in Washington on a national level here, because, yes, here in Washington, we are obviously the nation's capital. There is an interest that somebody like a president or former president has in this city, and you've got former President Trump pledging a kind of federal takeover here.
Yeah, that's right. This is such an easy issue for Donald Trump and the Republican Party to capitalize on. And as you said, on Truth Social, he is broadcasting about his former administration official, Mike Gill, saying that he's a highly respected member of the Trump administration, ruthlessly and viciously shot in the head. And he said the federal government must take over D.C. Of course, that's hyperbole, Hallie. That's not going to happen. But what is true is that the Republicans are making hay about violent crime, and the Democrats seem to be avoiding talking about it.
The other piece of this, too, that I think is stunning for folks in Washington, just to get a little local here, Ken, is where some of this crime is happening, right? I mean, Mike Gill was shot, I think, 10 blocks, something like that, from the White House. I mean, right in the heart of downtown Washington, near the convention center, if people know where that is, where these law firms and lobbying firms are.
That is right, and that is the sad reality. When it's happening in poor communities, it gets less attention. When it spills into the downtowns of major cities and affluent communities, that's when a lot of more people start to care about it, and you're seeing that in Washington, D.C., Hallie.
Yeah, it is certainly an issue that I think people in Washington are looking at. Ken Delanian, thank you so much. That does it for us for this hour, but we have so much more ahead tomorrow because Gabby Douglas, the Olympic gymnast, is joining us, and she's got an exclusive announcement. Are you dying to hear what it is? So are we. We'll see you tomorrow with Gabby right here on NBC News Now. We've got more coverage picking up right now. We are coming on the air tonight with a ferocious and deadly storm lashing Southern California. Cars swamped in muds from landslides. Look at that, totally washed out roads. Nearly 500,000 people without power, with officials saying the relentless downpour is about to get even more intense. We'll take you live to where it's happening. Then that stunning revelation from Buckingham Palace. King Charles has cancer, set to step away from the public eye. We'll tell you who's rushing to be by his side and some of the important details the palace is leaving out. Plus, we take you inside the U.S. hunt for Houthi weapons in an exclusive on board a key Navy ship in the middle of the Red Sea, with both the U.S. and militant groups saying they are not backing down. And the mixed bag for Boeing tonight, why some of their newest planes are really close to getting cleared to fly, while another glitch means some 737s aren't leaving the factory anytime soon. Then the brand new update and apology in a years-long sex assault scandal rocking the hockey world. We're breaking it down a little bit later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight we start with that dangerous and deadly situation out west. Massive mudslides one example in the Hollywood Hills in LA, we're about to show you, with storms in California pummeling the state. Look at this. This is what it is like. So much water. In some places, it is just ripping land down these hills, damaging homes. People have to evacuate. Already, we're seeing falling trees that have killed at least 3 people. Millions more still in danger in California. And the risk, I mean, look at that. You can see the scale of some of the destruction here. The risk is not even close to being over. Further north in San Jose, watch this. Rescuers are using a raft to pull out 3 people, 3 dogs, and 9 puppies after they were trapped in this flooding. 30 million people under flood watch. Hundreds of thousands don't have power. Police reporting dozens of road rescue calls. People are trying to maneuver through the rain. Don't do that, right? Don't drive through deep water like that. That can be very dangerous. The airport in Santa Barbara is shutting down till further notice. Meteorologists say this area has not seen a storm this bad since 2010. Schools are shutting down. Counties across the state issuing evacuation warnings. There are states of emergency for some of the spots most at risk of flash floods. Even Disneyland is closing its doors early today. I want to bring in Sam Brock, live for us on the ground in Napa. Give us a sense of what it's looking like where you are, because this storm could potentially be historic, dumping so much rain in such a short amount of time on the state.
Yeah, it's really split, Hallie, in the sense that you have mudslides and all that floodwater you were describing in Southern California. The risk here in Northern California had been the wind event. And I will say this, there have been 3 confirmed fatalities so far from the storm. All 3 of them have been giant trees that have been uprooted and fallen onto homes or onto human beings, on top of cars. That's what we're seeing here. It happened in Santa Cruz County, Sutter County, which is where Yuba City is, a little bit farther inland. Look behind me right now, and I'm not talking about trees like this size. I mean trees like this size. This is a Douglas fir tree. Okay, the width of this trunk, Hallie, is double me. Take a couple steps with me for a second so we can really understand the breadth. I mean, look at the size of this. The people that live in this home where this fell over at 2:30 in the morning are an older couple in their 80s, Hallie. We're talking about Ron and Linda Ray. They were here early hours. It actually ended up in their living room. You can see a piece of the branch that punctured the living room, the wall itself. They were a couple of rooms behind on the same floor, so luckily they weren't directly exposed to it. But they're just lucky to be alive right now. And if you want to talk about height, this isn't just the only tree of this size on their property. Okay, there are redwoods. We're in California. The average redwood is about 200 to 240 feet tall. 2 on the side. They have another couple cluster of redwoods on the other side of the house. Weren't sure if they were going to come down. This is not even the only house today that I've been to where I've seen trees split the physical house. I spoke with a man by the name of Derek Bowerman, another part of Napa today. He was in the house with his 4 children. They were in one part in a bedroom on the 2nd floor of the property. He was in the living room, and all of a sudden, this giant redwood tree comes crashing through at 5 a.m. Take a listen.
I was on the couch about 6 feet away from where it fell, and I was asleep, and 5 a.m.
You were in that room?
I was in that room right there.
First of all, why were you asleep on the couch in that room?
We got 4 kids. Saturday night.
And they're all okay?
They're all fine. The branches had hit their window, but didn't penetrate through.
So he's counting his lucky stars also. We're talking about cars and close calls. I interviewed a man named Shannon today who showed me his car. This is a pickup truck. The tree came down as he was getting out onto the street to remove tree branches to just drive by. His wife was in the passenger seat. She was fine. But you'll see as you open up the driver's side, there's this giant chunk of tree that came through the roof of the car and compressed the roof down, would have split where his head would have been, except he wasn't in the car at the time. These are the close calls that we're seeing all over just this one town in Northern California, Hallie.
Close calls again and again. And while it looks sunny where you are, Sam, it is a very different picture further south. And the danger, obviously, still very much there. Sam, thank you so much. Appreciate you being with us. Got to take you overseas now with some new reaction tonight to that news out of Buckingham Palace that King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. We don't know what kind or what stage or when he's going to be back to his public duties after doctors said he should hold off on those for now. President Biden said he's going to give the king a call, but we already know the king has spoken with both of his sons about the diagnosis, per the palace. With Prince Harry, you see him on the left there, after years of tension, set to travel to the UK to see his dad at some point soon, according to a source close to Harry and his wife, Meghan Markle. I want to bring in Megan Fitzgerald, who's live for us outside Buckingham Palace. We still don't know a lot about this, right? But there was a question, because he was treated for an enlarged prostate just last week. There was a question of, could this be prostate cancer for King Charles? The palace says, no, that is not the case. But that's about it, right? I mean, tell us what other, and I know the details are spare, but what else we can kind of glean from some of this?
Yeah, Hallie, you're absolutely right. I mean, the details are thin here, but what we are learning from the palace, what they have confirmed, is that when King Charles went in for that procedure for an enlarged prostate about a week and a half ago, they found another issue. And then after multiple tests, it was in fact confirmed that the king does have a form of cancer. But look, you know, we saw him yesterday for the first time since being released from the hospital a week ago, and he seemed in good form. He was at Sandringham. He was walking to and from the church service. He was waving, smiling at people. And then, of course, he returned today to begin his treatments for cancer. What kind of cancer? We don't know. Doctors are encouraging him to postpone all of his engagements until after treatment is done. When will that treatment be done? Again, these are the details that the palace have not yet confirmed, but they do say that the king is in treatment and is dealing with some form of cancer, Hallie.
What does it mean from a practical standpoint to see the king step back on some of his responsibilities in the UK? What does that mean sort of practically for people there?
You know, it's a good question. We're looking at, so to speak, a thin bench here, right? You know, Prince Andrew, Prince Harry, they're no longer active working royals, right? So a lot of the responsibility likely going to have to fall on the shoulders of Prince William and Queen Camilla. Prince William, as you know, is taking care of his wife, who just is recovering from planned abdominal surgery. But it was a pretty significant deal because she's not going to be able to resume her duties until likely after Easter. So he's busy tackling that. A lot of the responsibility will be shared between him and Queen Camilla. And keep in mind, Hallie, we're talking about King Charles with a very packed schedule. So there's a lot of engagements that he has on his agenda.
I just have to say, Megyn, too, the prospect of Prince Harry coming back to see his father. I mean, after candidly, the bad blood that he's written about, Harry has for years now, that is, I think, another piece of this that has people kind of reacting in this moment to what's happening.
Absolutely. I mean, we have seen what is likely this deteriorating situation since that Netflix docuseries was released. Then, of course, it was the bombshell book that Harry released, the tell-all book. The last time he saw his father was in May for his coronation. That was a chilly reception. He came in, he flew right back out. But, you know, tragedy, you know, terrible encounters, things that happen in people's lives, certainly a health scare has a potential of bringing families together. So that's certainly something that we'll be watching for, Hallie.
Megyn Fitzgerald with the late night for us there at Buckingham Palace. All of this news, of course, coming out late today. Megyn, thank you. Let's bring it back here to Washington. And a split screen right now over at the Capitol, just blocks from where I'm sitting. On the one side, you've got the House Rules Committee, so a specific House committee, voting right now on whether to send articles of impeachment to the full House against the person you see here, the Homeland Security Secretary. That's probably going to pass the committee. That means it's going to go to a full vote later on this week. Fine, watching that. Other side of the Capitol, Senate side of the Capitol, you've got a divided Senate Republican caucus looking at this border bill, this huge deal bill that's come out that negotiators have been working on for months now, with Republicans specifically divided on a deal that a lot of them have been saying for years that they'd like to see. You've got 4 Senate Republicans, at least, coming out, joining a bunch of colleagues in the House to oppose this bill. You see those senators there. What's in the bill? Things Republicans had on their wish lists previously. Total border shutdowns, more money for new hires and deportation flights, a stricter asylum process. So what's behind this? Why are Republicans backing away from it? Well, there's a question of politics here, at least from former President Donald Trump. He keeps bashing this plan, today calling it a highly sophisticated trap, in his words. I want to bring in NBC's Ryan Nobles, who is joining us now. As we speak, Ryan, I think that Senate Republicans are either getting ready to or are huddling behind closed doors to talk about this. And let me just lay this out for people who aren't following this the way that you are or that I am. Negotiations have been going on for months, right? Immigration is always a thorny issue for any Congress. We've seen that over the course of the last 20, 30 years, if you will. Negotiations have been happening. There's finally now a bill to be looked at, and it's getting a thumbs down from a lot of folks on the Republican side in the House and some in the Senate. Is it DOA?
It doesn't look good right now, to be honest with you, Hallie, and many of those Republicans are emerging from that meeting, and that list is growing of Republicans that are opposed to this measure.
Wait, they're coming out of the meeting that started 10 minutes ago?
Well, they're coming in and out of the meeting as they go.
Okay,
you know how these meetings work.
Yeah,
But some of the But some of these people that we're hearing from that are either going into or coming out of that meeting are telling our reporters that are stationed around it that the list is growing. Some suggesting that this measure should be delayed, a vote that's scheduled for as early as Wednesday. And so if you just look at the list that we know are hard-nosed, you've got folks like Steve Daines, who's, of course, in leadership in charge of the campaign committee. He said, I can't support a bill that doesn't secure the border. I'm a no. Mike Lee, the border deal is even worse than we thought. Josh Hallie says that the border deal is a huge middle finger to the working people. Ted Cruz says that they shouldn't just vote no, but hell no. The reason that we're showing you this is that it's not that they're just opposed to it, but they're very, very vocally and hardcore opposed to it. Now, it's important to point out, Hallie, we don't expect most Republicans to vote for this. They don't necessarily need most Republicans to vote for it in the Senate, but they do need at least 10. And there's also the possibility that they're going to lose Democrats. So they probably need even more than 10 in order to get this over the finish line. I talked to both of the key negotiators in this, Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. This is what they told me about why this measure should pass.
We did exactly what Republicans asked of us, and now those same Republicans are saying we've changed our mind.
This is the starting proposal, and if people want to be able to make changes on it, let's make changes on it. But the worst case scenario is to do nothing.
And what I found interesting in my conversations with both these men is that they're trying to convince their colleagues to look at the substance of this. But I fear we might be past that already, Hallie. This has just gotten into the water as a political issue. And once there becomes a political issue, it's hard to try and spool things back into the real, if you will.
Okay, what you just said is so interesting to me, Ryan, right? Because there would be a practical impact from a piece of legislation like this. As we have been covering with our reporters on the ground in Texas, our reporters on the ground along the border now for months, what's happening there, right? In this humanitarian crisis that is happening. You also now have, in an election year, as you point out, the specter of politics coming into this, because I think some folks might be looking at this going, wait a second, this is like the dog catching the car, right? Republicans have been trying to chase some of these pieces in this bill for a long time, but now it is not something that they seem to be able to get behind.
Yeah, the simple fact is nothing's going to happen, and the crisis is going to get worse. And that has got to be a frustrating thing for people that actually care about fixing the issue at the border. But there's also the other national security components involved here. You've got funding for Ukraine to the tune of $60 billion, funding for Israel, funding for the Indo-Pacific. All that right now off the table if they can't get this measure through.
Ryan Nobles live for us there on Capitol Hill. Always good to have you, friend. Thanks for running around today, getting all that sound. Appreciate it. Let's get you some rare exclusive reporting now that NBC News is getting on U.S. operations in the Red Sea in the Middle East. Our own Courtney Kuby embedding with the Navy on the USS Eisenhower as the U.S. is launching retaliatory strikes against Houthi rebels. Those rebels pledging to hit back any minute, saying they're going to keep up their attacks until Israel stops fighting in Gaza. The U.S. making promises of its own, saying America will only keep pushing forward with its own military campaign. I want to bring in Courtney Kuby, who I believe is joining us now live from Bahrain. Courtney, it's incredible exclusive reporting. Take us inside what you are seeing and how it connects to the bigger picture in the region.
So the mission that we went out to cover is really to defend against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They're the Iranian-backed group that have been firing missiles, drones, even unmanned surface vessels or sea drones. They've been firing them into the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden for weeks now. And while most of the projectiles they fire off are not successful, they splash in the water or they're shot down, several have gotten through and have seriously damaged some ships. So this is it's a coalition effort to defend these waters. But what we've been really focused on the last several days is what the U.S. has been doing either unilaterally or in some cases with their British counterparts. And that's to conduct airstrikes, both from manned aircraft and then also to strike into Yemen from the sea with Tomahawk missiles. We were looking at how exactly that happens. And we got very rare exclusive access on board the USS Eisenhower. It's an aircraft carrier where all of those jets and surveillance planes are taking off to fly these missions into Yemen. In addition to that, Hallie, we got onto the USS Mason. It's a destroyer also in the area. They're one of the ones who've been firing off Tomahawk missiles. So again, this whole mission here is to try to stop the Houthis from continuing to threaten the commerce and military ships actually in the Red Sea.
Courtney, is there anything that you've seen in the course of your reporting there, because you've been on the ground, I know, working it, that has surprised you? Anything that you didn't expect to see as you are now getting some of this incredible access to what's happening with these military operations?
Yeah, I was really surprised by the number of aircraft that took off to carry out that attack on Saturday night. There were more than 24 U.S. military aircraft for this, and you know, I kept trying to get a sense of why that was. You know, they struck a lot of targets, more than 36 targets at 13 different locations. So when you think about it that way, they really had to spread out across a large geographic area of Yemen. But to see all those aircraft taking off one after the other, it's not the first time I've seen carrier flight ops, frankly, not even on the Eisenhower, but to see just the volume that they sent out for this the other night. And also, it was a good insight into how the process works and happens here. So I think a lot of viewers may think of strikes that happen. It's, the U.S. sees something and they go in and take a strike. Well, that's a dynamic strike. That happens. But in the cases of what we saw on Saturday night, that's considered a pre-planned mission. So it goes all the way up to the White House for the approval, makes its way down, and then the men and women who we spent the last several days with, they're the ones who do the final level of planning and then ultimately execute that mission.
Courtney Kuby, we're so glad to have you there. Our thanks to you, to your team, for staying up so late for us there live in Bahrain. Thanks, Court. We got to get to some breaking news back here at home because we are learning several people are missing after an avalanche at a ski resort in Nevada. It's northwest of Las Vegas. Police are confirming this in just the last couple of minutes. They say search and rescue is en route. The conditions obviously very hazardous. This, of course, is coming on the heels of that avalanche we saw last month in California near Lake Tahoe. Turned out to be deadly. One person was killed. I want to bring in Bill Cairns, who is tracking this for us. What's happening with this particular area of Nevada? Has it been just a ton of snow, Bill? Is it that the temperatures are so divergent? What's up?
It's the atmospheric river that hit California that is going right over the top of where Lee Canyon's located here. They had 17 inches of snow reported yesterday. I haven't seen their snow report from the heavy snow that's coming down today. From social media posts from skiers and snowboarders, they said it was, coming down hard. There's cars off the roads on the way to the mountain, in and out. The actual resort, so here's Mount Charleston, and Lee Canyon is located right about where my finger is here. It's tall. I mean, the peak is at 11,000 feet. The base is about 8,000 feet. It's plenty high enough that this is all snow that we're seeing here coming down. Here's Las Vegas, by the way. It takes about 45 minutes to about an hour to do the drive heading up to here to the ski resort. And one other thing to note, Hallie, I was just looking at it. This resort actually closed 3 weeks ago from an avalanche when a backcountry skier died. So this is their second significant avalanche in about 3 weeks. There were no avalanche warnings that were out, but obviously with the atmospheric river and the heavy snow predicted, there are winter storm warnings. It was well known how hard it was going to snow. We don't know if it was an avalanche in the backcountry or on the resort at this point. We don't know if the people missing have beacons on them, which is what is common when you have backcountry skiers. You're supposed to have these emergency warning beacons in case you do get caught in an avalanche. They can help find you. The other issue is now local time. It is 3:20 in Las Vegas, and the sun sets in about an hour and 45 minutes. You can imagine that they're rushing and try to do this as quickly as they can in the middle of a big snowstorm that's not showing any signs of ending as we go throughout the night tonight. So extremely difficult conditions are only going to get worse in about 2 hours from now when the sun goes down.
Very scary, very dangerous. Bill Cairns, please keep tracking that. I know we'll be checking back in with you as we get any news or any updates. Appreciate it. Take you down to Chile now with a horrific scene there. Hundreds of people missing, 122 people killed in deadly wildfires that have been ripping through the country. Today, the first of 2 days of national mourning in the country. After how bad this has been, you see it here. Whole neighborhoods, just piles of ash. Look at that car burned out, one of so many. The Chilean president says people have to prepare. They have to brace themselves for more bad news. That's because 100 fires almost are still actively burning across something like 100,000 acres of land. There's a curfew that goes into place tonight, 9 o'clock in Chile, in some of the hardest hit spots. Juan Venegas is joining us now. Tell us what we need to know about the push to get them under control, how they spread so quickly, and what we think caused them.
Hallie, well, we do have some good news when it comes to the weather. So one of the reasons why these fires spread so fast, according to authorities, were the winds. We also had high temperatures last week, record high temperatures in Chile. All of that is changing. So the forecast now indicates that they will have less wind, and also it won't be as hot as it's been. So we had that number shared by authorities of about 165 fires over the weekend. They are also now informing that the worst fires have either been controlled controlled or they're not burning any longer. So we're seeing a map of the most affected areas. This is central Chile, the region of Valparaíso. Viña del Mar is the most well-known city. This is a resort city where a lot of communities were burned to the ground. We can see these images of the surroundings of Viña del Mar. A lot of the people that are speaking about what it's like or what it was like for them to escape the flames are now also talking about relatives that they lost in the fires. Let's hear from one of them.
A mi hermana creo que se le olvidó algo, que la cartera que tenía
My
que
sister
sacar se le
forgot
olvidó
something, her wallet. She had to get it out and so returned, and my father stayed there. She went back, but the smoke there consumed him. Later, he was intoxicated and could not breathe. I think there were many bodies that died intact.
And Hallie, we're also seeing images coming from some of the firefighters that have been fighting these fires. A lot of them are volunteers. There was a video from a group of volunteers who were driving through the National Botanical Garden. And as they were driving, they were scared because they didn't know if the vehicle was going to be safe in those flames, Hallie. And they saw people outside of their vehicle that they then had to rescue. More than 90% of that National Botanical Garden did burn in these fires. Incredible images being shared by these firefighters.
Guad Venegas, thank you very much for that reporting. We're staying on top of this story for sure. Back here at home, some good news and some bad news tonight for Boeing, with one set of their planes almost totally cleared to fly, but another set going to have to sit in Boeing's factories for the foreseeable future. All right, so first things first, right? The FAA says they're almost done inspecting nearly 150 of Boeing's 737 MAX 9s, an announcement that comes a month to the day after that door plug blew off that Alaska Airlines flight in midair. The FAA says they looked at most of the planes, 94% of them so far, that they need to inspect before they fly again. Okay, fine, there's that. But there is also another headline for Boeing tonight, revealing another possible issue with its 737s, misdrilled holes, or holes that were drilled improperly on the fuselages of about 50 of their yet-to-be-delivered planes. NBC's Tom Costello is joining us now. Misdrilled holes sounds kind of scary.
Sounds scary, but
tell me.
I'm always going to give you the straight scoop here. Unfortunately, misdrilled holes happen from time to time, and not that unusual, I will tell you, with this provider, with Spirit Aerosystems. They've had a lot of production problems over the years. They've been cited and they've been sued over these production problems. That said, this is significant in that it's another black eye for Boeing, and it really suggests that its entire supply chain continues to be a problem. So we've been talking about what Boeing is doing to try to fix that. The FAA today also outlined a number of steps. It's going to double down on inspections, double down on surveillance, double down on audits inside not just Boeing, but also this company I mentioned, Spirit Aerosystems, trying to figure out what is the problem. So that's the FAA talking about the various steps it's going to take to try to figure out how it can try to get a better handle on Boeing's problems. Make no mistake about it, this is having a serious impact. And tomorrow, the FAA chief will be on Capitol Hill. He is likely to come out with a pretty tough line against Boeing, announcing these steps I told you about. But in addition, he's going to be on the hot seat. Where have the FAA inspectors been in these Boeing production plants for the last few years since the MAX 8 crashes killed 346 people?
But so talk about that, the longer-term impact here to Boeing, because there were those two fatal crashes. There was that door plug blowout just last month. There's this sort of drip, drip, drip of news coming out about Boeing and some of its subcontractors here. What's your sense from talking to folks in and around the company about where things go for them?
By the way, and there's the timeline, right? We've talked about the various crashes, Lion Air, Ethiopian Air, then we had the door plug in January. Listen, I think they've used up a lot of goodwill in the FAA. They don't have the benefit of the doubt anymore, and I think we're going to see even on Capitol Hill, they don't have the benefit of the doubt. Take a look at what the public opinion polls show on Boeing right now, because before this incident with the door plug back in December, public opinion showed about 32% trusted Boeing. That's now dropped. Look at that. And Boeing's stock price has taken a hit because of all of this drama over the course of the last 6 weeks.
The bottom line, those are numbers are not what Boeing wants to see, Tom, right? Where they're talking about trust, where they're talking about stock. They don't want to see a down arrow. They want to see an up arrow.
Absolutely true. That said, this is a national security company. It's responsible for a huge section of the United States GDP. Boeing's not going out of business. There's really only one other competitor out there. That's Airbus. They're not going out of business, and it's in the United States' interest that they do well.
That's so interesting. Tom Costello, we're so glad to have you. Thank you. Lots of news on that front today. Appreciate it. Lots more coming up here on the show, including an actress in India getting a ton of backlash after faking her own death. Why she says she did it for the public good. Plus, the NBA says it'll play on glass for the first time. We'll explain. A new update for you tonight in a scandal that has truly upended the hockey world and that's forcing the NHL and really all of Canada to face questions about the sports culture. You've got police in Ontario finally announcing charges against 5 players related to an alleged 2018 sexual assault. And they're apologizing to the victim.
On behalf of the London Police Service, my sincerest apology to the victim, to her family, for the amount of time that it has taken to reach this point.
You see the 5 players there. The big name, Carter Hart, the Flyers goalie. Each of these players is charged with 1 count of sex assault, with Mike McLeod facing a 2nd charge. All 5 say they're not guilty. The 4 players here who are still in the NHL are on leave. And just in the last hour, the victim reacting to today's news through her attorney, saying it takes an incredible amount of courage for any survivor of sex assault to report to the police and participate in the criminal justice system. Going on to say that is certainly true for her. Shaq Brewster is covering this one for us. We've been following this scandal on this show for more than a year now. It has led to big money settlements. It's led to parliamentary hearings in Canada. It's led to a lot of criticism on the police end of it here and of Hockey Canada, too. We're hearing from some of these entities in just the last little bit. Talk us through it.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Hallie. Hockey Canada releasing a statement, first saying that they fully cooperated with this entire investigation and saying that they can promise to continue that cooperation as this case moves forward. The CEO of Hockey Canada releasing a statement that you see on screen right now, saying that it recognizes that in the past we have been too slow to act and that they are working urgently to put in place necessary measures to regain the trust of Canadians. That's me paraphrasing a little bit, but let's take a step back here. Police confirmed this in the press conference today. It was a lawsuit filed against Hockey Canada and other organizations that really led to the charges that we saw here today. If you look at the timeline that police confirmed today, the alleged assault happened in June of 2018. They say that it was immediately reported. An investigation was opened up, but then closed about 8 months after that. But in May of 2020, that's when everything changed, because Hockey Canada settled a lawsuit out of court, and news of that settlement caused outrage and also caused the London Police Department to go back and review the initial case. And that led to charges being filed. We saw the players appear in court earlier today. But Hallie, at that press conference, the lead detective said that it was really the outrage from that initial news of settlement that led to new tips, new witnesses, and new evidence in the case. And that's despite the police chief and lead detective not detailing what those measures were.
The NHL commissioner was asked a lot about this at the All-Star game this weekend, Gary Bettman. I want to play a little bit of that.
And so at this stage, the most responsible and prudent thing for us to do is await the conclusion of the judicial proceedings, at which point we will respond as appropriate at the time.
Any more detail about why he's taking that approach, Shaq?
Yeah, it goes back to the idea that the National Hockey League has done its own kind of external investigation. They hired a firm essentially to go and do their investigation. We know it was a 12-month-long investigation. They say that they interviewed all of the members of that 2018 junior hockey team. They did not interview the victim. They say that they were ready to present the findings of that investigation to the Players Association, but because of these charges being filed, and we got wind that these charges were being filed late last month. When that happened, they said that they're going to now put a pause on it. They're going to let that process play out, and then they will release the findings of their internal investigation. By the way, Hallie, it's not just the NHL. You also have Hockey Canada completing their own investigation. They, too, because of an appeal, are holding on to the results of those investigations, especially with this new case now.
Shaq Brewster, there's a lot going on. Appreciate you walking us through it all. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, Snap. today, which owns Snapchat, says it's laying off something like 500 people, or 10% of its workforce. Snap says it's trying to make sure it can tackle its top priorities and keep growing. This is on the heels of other layoffs at places like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, with some of those tech companies getting hit. Number 2, LA police have arrested a suspect in this dog napping we told you about. Remember this? Somebody drove off with a dog, a little Frenchie, a couple weeks ago. The owner jumps on the hood of the car to try to save her pup. That's what happened. Turns out that person who took the dog has been arrested, but it is not clear whether that little Frenchie pup has been found. Number 3, the NBA is set to play on glass for the first time ever at some of its all-star events coming up in a couple weeks. It's an LED court that'll display things like stats and replays and even some animations to track players. Apparently, it feels a lot like playing on wood, just in case the actual all-star game itself will be still played on a wooden court. Number 4, a new study looking at sea sponges suggests the world has warmed up more than we thought over the last 300 years. Why sea sponges? Well, apparently they're kind of like the tree rings or ice cores. They can show us how the environment changes over time. Researchers say industrialization before 1900 had a bigger impact than we knew. If that's true, it means we have less time, they say, to turn things around when it comes to climate change. Still, some scientists are skeptical. They say we can't take away all of that from a sea sponge. Number 5, Gap is bringing in really high-profile fashion designer Zac Posen as its creative director. The company's trying to turn things around after years of struggling sales. This is one of the first big moves from Gap's new CEO, who called Zac Posen a great fit. When we come back, some developing news tonight on Nikki Haley, why the Republican presidential candidate is asking for Secret Service protection. Plus, a messy situation in Hong Kong. What has some soccer fans there so upset? Some developing news now from the campaign trail as our team is learning that Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley is asking for Secret Service protection. We're asking for comment now from the Secret Service, but I want to bring in Alli, who's joining us now. What is behind this? It seems like it's being motivated by threats that Haley says she's facing.
Yeah, look, and Haley said this as recently as Friday, Hallie, saying that an increase in threats on the campaign trail is sort of part of life on the trail these days as a politician. So certainly not what you want to hear. But you and I have done these presidential campaigns before. There always comes a point with these candidates where they want to see a ramp up in security and where there's usually a request for Secret Service protection. Now, I'm out to the Secret Service to confirm this with them and to ask for any more details that they might have. But this is confirmed to me by the Nikki Haley campaign, a spokesperson there confirming comments that Haley made earlier today to the Wall Street Journal, where she cited that increase in threats as a reason why they've reached out to Secret Service for Secret Service protection. Now, we're standing here outside of one of her events in Spartanburg. You and I both know it's pretty easy to identify Secret Service protection once it is in place. I am not yet seeing signs of that here, but of course, that's something that we'll now keep an eye on as we head into really one of the next phases of this race, where there's only 2 candidates left on the Republican side. Of course, a binary between the former President Donald Trump, who already has Secret Service protection from his time in the White House, to now Nikki Haley being the former UN ambassador, former governor of this state, and now asking for that Secret Service protection herself, Hallie.
And wasn't her house swatted at some point in the last couple of months, Alli?
Yes, multiple times, and that's something that we learned, of course, well after it had happened. That was earlier this year, right at the turn of the year, around January 1st or 2nd. But certainly we've seen the reporting around some of this. When she talks about an increase in threats, that's one of the things that we've heard. But certainly at campaign events, I can tell you, she usually has her own law enforcement protection. So many of these candidates already have that. But of course, this is an escalation in security.
Alli live for us there on the campaign trail in Spartanburg with that developing news for us tonight from the Haley campaign. Alli, thank you so much. Speaking of the Republican campaign trail, this week Republicans in Nevada are going to be making their pick in a presidential race that has dozens of delegates on the line. And for the first time this year, people have the chance to vote on 2 separate days in 2 different processes, only one of which actually counts. Yes, it is messy. It is mystifying. GOP officials saying they've been inundated with thousands of phone calls from confused Nevadans. So how does it actually all work? And why is former President Trump favored to win? We explain in tonight's breakdown. Even before the election in Nevada, a declaration of victory from former President Trump.
I'm pleased to announce we just won Nevada.
He hasn't technically won Nevada, not yet, but he almost certainly will, even though he's not even on the primary ballot. Sound confusing? join the club.
It doesn't make much sense to me.
I think our voting system, frankly, is a mess.
Here's the deal. In Nevada this year, registered Republicans will have 2 election days, and they can participate in both. On Thursday, a caucus, like what we saw in Iowa, people gathering in gyms and cafeterias. But up first, tomorrow, a more traditional primary, people lining up to cast ballots. Ballots that do not include Donald Trump's name, as you see here, because candidates cannot compete in both contests. And this year, only the caucuses count for Nevada Republicans when it comes to delegates.
Do the caucus, not the primary. The primary is meaningless.
So how did we get here? In 2020, the Democratic side dealt with complaints of inconsistencies and reporting problems in caucuses, especially in Iowa. So the Dems, who controlled Nevada at the time, passed a law to move to a primary system instead. Nevada Republicans wanted to stick with the caucuses. And under the new law, the state party can, so they are. Partly because, experts say, caucuses favor former President Trump, who has a more loyal base of supporters more likely to show up.
He would certainly benefit more from the caucus system. And so for a lot of people in the state, it's also viewed as a way to boost his candidacy relative to the other Republicans.
Do you think this was done to be able to help Donald Trump in Nevada?
Oh, I absolutely believe that's exactly why it was done.
Former Clark County Republican Chair Chuck Muth worries this new process will turn off voters because of how messy it seems.
I've been warning how stupid this was and what a public relations disaster it was going to be. And I hate to say that I told you so, but I don't hate saying I told you so because I did tell them that this was going to happen. And anybody could have looked at that and seen it.
Now, confusion and conspiracies. Online, one post accusing the establishment of shoving Nikki Haley down our throat. Another, outraged and disgusted Mr. Trump isn't on the primary ballot.
Washoe County Republican Party.
Some GOP county chairs reporting thousands of phone calls from mad and mystified Republicans.
The phone is ringing off the hook. I got to have a short, concise answer that not only answers their question, but gives them the direction on how to succeed.
Nevada GOP Chairman Michael McDonald telling the Associated Press this fall, until we get voter ID and we get the mail-in ballot situation under control, the only pure way to have this is through a caucus. The state's governor, Joe Lombardo, has endorsed Mr. Trump, saying for all practical purposes, the race is over. As for Nikki Haley, she is not competing in the caucuses, but her name is on the primary ballot.
Talk to the people in Nevada. They will tell you the caucuses have been sealed up, bought and paid for a long time. And so that's why we got into the primary. But we're going to focus on the states that are fair.
Still, keep in mind, even if Haley were to win the primary tomorrow, it would be a hollow victory since she would not get any delegates, with 26 of them on the line. That's no small haul, considering Mr. Trump won 32 in New Hampshire and Iowa combined. Only Nevada's caucus winner can claim Nevada's delegates and move one step closer to the nomination.
Nevada will show up, and we will deliver you 100% of delegates for the state of Nevada to Donald J. Trump.
Okay, so we're watching this week. There's one more twist to tell you about. You know that primary tomorrow? Remember, the primary, not the caucus. The winner could end up being none of the above, which is a ballot option that some Trump backers are pushing to deny Haley even a symbolic victory. We're going to have complete coverage right here for you on NBC News Now of all of it. NBC News covers hundreds of other stories each day, hundreds of international stories, too. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our international teams have done it for you. Here's some of what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of India, actress Poonam Pandey is facing major backlash after faking her own death. A couple of days ago, a post went up on her Instagram. You see it here. They say, we've lost her to cervical cancer. They say she died. A day later, Pandey posted saying she's alive and was just trying to raise awareness for cervical cancer. She was basically defending what she did. The post, let me tell you, the comment section, not thrilled. People are saying, like, worst awareness stunt, highly not appreciated. Out of Hong Kong, some fans are furious after paying hundreds of dollars to see Lionel Messi in action, only for him to sit out the whole game. 40,000 fans showed up for the sold-out match between a Hong Kong team and Messi's team, Inter Miami. The government there said it was deeply disappointed that Messi never took the field. They threatened to cut some of the sponsorship money they gave. Inter Miami's head coach said he didn't want to risk Messi's injuries getting any worse. And out of France, Parisians voting to triple parking fees for SUVs in the city starting this fall. People who don't live in Paris are going to have to pay nearly $20 an hour to park their SUV there. Paris wants to discourage what the city calls bulky, polluting cars. They want to become totally bikeable. Coming up, some new details in a D.C. crime spree that's led to the death of a former Trump administration official. Why violent crime is rising here, but going down in nearly every other big city in America. We are learning more tonight about a former Trump administration official who died this weekend after being shot during an apparently random carjacking spree. We're talking about Mike Gill, shot while he was sitting in his car waiting to pick up his wife right in the heart of downtown Washington when this attacker got into Gill's car, shot him in the head. Violent attacks in D.C. are piling up and spilling into neighborhoods that typically haven't dealt with this kind of violence, making some folks who have lived here for a while feel pretty unsafe. There have been more and more calls for something to be done, some kind of a solution here, including from former President Trump, who has promised to essentially occupy the Capitol with federal troops if he wins the election. Ken Delanian is joining us now. For former President, we'll get to the politics in a second, Ken, as you are there for us now in Washington. But let's get to the sort of facts of the matter here, because violent crime is going down in a lot of cities across the country, but not here in Washington. Why are we an outlier?
It depends on who you ask, Hallie, but there are a few facts that are beyond dispute. One is that the police department has a staffing crisis. They are at the lowest number of police officers in decades, despite offering $25,000 signing bonuses. People do not want to be a police officer in D.C. It's also true that police in D.C. solve violent crimes at a lower rate than in some other cities. And then you have what critics, including some police officers, would say, which is that there is a perception, if not a reality, that criminals are not held accountable in DC by DC judges. They're set free after being arrested for violent crimes, and they're not receiving stiff sentences when convicted of violent crimes. There may be other factors at work, but the bottom line is that, well, as you said, crime is down 10% or more, violent crime in most major cities across the country. It's up 39% over the last year in D.C. and a stunning 55% when it comes to violent gun crime. Allie.
It is also becoming, as you well know, Ken, a flashpoint, right? Crime in Washington on a national level here, because, yes, here in Washington, we are obviously the nation's capital. There is an interest that somebody like a president or former president has in this city, and you've got former President Trump pledging a kind of federal takeover here.
Yeah, that's right. This is such an easy issue for Donald Trump and the Republican Party to capitalize on. And as you said, on Truth Social, he is broadcasting about his former administration official, Mike Gill, saying that he's a highly respected member of the Trump administration, ruthlessly and viciously shot in the head. And he said the federal government must take over D.C. Now, of course, that's hyperbole, Hallie. That's not going to happen. But what is true is that the Republicans are making hay about violent crime, and the Democrats seem to be avoiding talking about it.
The other piece of this, too, that I think is stunning for folks in Washington, just to get a little local here, Ken, is where some of this crime is happening, right? I mean, Mike Gill was shot, I think, 10 blocks, something like that, from the White House. I mean, right in the heart of downtown Washington, near the convention center, if people know where that is, where these law firms and lobbying firms are.
That is right, and that is the sad reality. When it's happening in poor communities, it gets less attention. When it spills into the downtowns of major cities and affluent communities, that's when a lot more people start to care about it, and you're seeing that in Washington, D.C., Hallie.
Yeah, it is certainly an issue that I think people in Washington are looking at. Ken Delanian, thank you so much. That does it for us for this hour, but we have so much more ahead tomorrow because Gabby Douglas, the Olympic gymnast, is joining us, and she's got an exclusive announcement. Are you dying to hear what it is? So are we. We'll see you tomorrow with Gabby right here on NBC News Now. We've got more coverage. Pick it up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.